The legal battle is approached through the established record. The account relies on verified filings and documentary evidence. The investigation rests on primary sources. Extensive court documents were obtained and reviewed. These include certified trial transcripts, providing a word-for-word record of the proceedings. Motions filed by the defense are cited in the record. Prosecution motions and oppositions appear alongside them. Official rulings at each level of review frame the issues. Together, these documents constitute the official record. They offer an unfiltered view of the legal arguments that have defined a long contest over justice, as each side sees it. Beyond the papers, interviews with participants are incorporated. Outreach was made to key figures across the litigation. Defense counsel described strategy and the basis for appellate claims. Their statements outlined strategy and the grounds for appeal. Prosecutors who tried the case were contacted for comment. Attorneys defending the convictions on appeal were also approached. Where provided, their perspectives supply a counterpoint. Independent legal experts with no case connection were consulted. Their analysis clarifies complex legal concepts. Key appellate terms are defined briefly. Appellate practice employs specialized language. Habeas corpus, post-conviction review of the legality of custody. Ineffective assistance. Sixth Amendment claim of deficient lawyering causing prejudice. Procedural error. A mistake in applying law or process during proceedings. Definitions are presented in clear, simple terms. For example, a procedural error is a mistake in how the court applied the law during trial. Understanding these terms is essential to the appeal's core arguments. The presentation remains transparent and accessible regardless of legal background. The presentation maintains a neutral, factual tone. It does not glamorize crime or pass judgment on Damien Hardy. The purpose is to document the legal process itself. The victim's experiences remain a solemn backdrop to the legal narrative. The focus remains the integrity of the justice system as applied to one person's appeal. The result is a comprehensive account of the legal challenges in Damien Hardy's case, the arguments advanced, and the current status of his fight within the courts of law. Table of Contents, Part 2. Act 1, Arrest, Charges, and Trial. 1. The knock on the door, Damien Hardy's arrest. 2. The weight of the state, the indictment. 3. The People versus Hardy, the prosecution's case. 4. A defense mounted, arguments and counter-arguments. 5. The jury's verdict, conviction, and sentencing. August 2004. A return flight, an airport stop. Federal agents flag a bogus passport at passport control. Damien World Hardy is detained at secondary screening. A joint task force moves in, EDNY, ICE, NYPD, and the FBI. He is placed under arrest at the airport without incident. That month, a one-count federal indictment is filed in Brooklyn. It charges conspiracy to distribute at least 1.5 kilograms of crack cocaine. Prosecutors allege organizer-level leadership within a large narcotics trafficking gang. The filing anchors venue in the Eastern District of New York, Brooklyn. In post-arrest questioning, Hardy reportedly spoke of fighting in a jihad against the United States and claimed to be Jesus, remarks noted in federal reports. Early signs labeled bizarre would later align with a schizophrenia diagnosis in the record. The arrest capped an 18-month joint investigation. Agents coordinated across agencies under the U.S. Attorney's Office for EDNY. Reports placed the detention at a New York area airport after a return from the Middle East. Screening escalated to secondary. Travel documents drew immediate scrutiny. ICE, NYPD, and FBI worked in concert with EDNY prosecutors. Custody transferred smoothly from airport security to federal agents. Evidence boxes labeled for EDNY began their path into the federal record. The indictment formally alleged a crack distribution conspiracy. Quantity threshold, at least 1.5 kilograms. Role allegation, organizer or leader within a large gang. The count carried serious federal penalties if proved. The case file grew. Task force reports, flight records, and intake notes. Post-arrest interviews documented the unusual statements. Those notes would later be cited amid competency disputes. Counsel engagement began immediately after federal booking. From the start, mental health cues appeared alongside discovery. The record would cabin the narrative to what could be proved. Venue confirmed, United States District Court, EDNY. Federal processing and detention followed routine procedure. The path ahead shifted toward competency and evaluation. The airport arrest was not isolated. It closed a long probe. Investigators had coordinated surveillance and records for months. By August, focus narrowed to Hardy as an organizer. Internal memos summarized the conspiracy and structure. Public filings remained measured, tethered to the single count. The federal narrative, airport arrest leading into EDNY narcotics charges. Not a house raid, an interdiction at the terminal. And from there, a federal case that would define the decade ahead. Following the arrest, Hardy was held pending federal proceedings. Prosecutors prepared the EDNY filing. Proceedings centered in Brooklyn Federal Court. The charging instrument, an indictment returned by a grand jury. Filed in August 2004, it alleged a single narcotics conspiracy. A grand jury weighs preliminary evidence in private. If probable cause is found, the case proceeds. This differs from a trial jury's role at verdict. Here, the prosecution's evidence frames the charge. In Hardy's federal case, the indictment was concise. One count, narcotics conspiracy in EDNY. It set out the conspiracy elements and time frame. The gravity was unmistakable despite a single count. The allegation focused on organization and scale. Not discrete street sales, an orchestrated enterprise. Multiple actors were alleged, with Hardy in a leadership role. The centerpiece remained the narcotics conspiracy. One count, serious quantity, serious exposure. Prosecutors framed it as coordinated conduct. The time frame tracked the investigation arc. Federal agents documented contacts and roles. Penalties would hinge on proof at trial. Other violent allegations were handled in separate proceedings. This chapter focuses on the EDNY narcotics case. The federal record framed scope, roles, and quantity. Each step, arraignment, motions, and reports, joined the file. Potential exposure was significant if the allegations were sustained. No RICO count here, just the conspiracy alleged in EDNY. The federal charge targeted narcotics trafficking, not enterprise racketeering. Strategy focused on the single count and alleged leadership role. Prosecutors tied related acts to one conspiracy, not multiple charges. Proof would require showing knowing participation and scope of the agreement. The airport arrest elevated the case's immediacy, but the litigation would hinge on competency. The indictment was lean. The record grew around mental health questions. Proceedings were delayed over a decade by competency disputes. Evaluations, hearings, and orders began to define pace. Names and roles appeared in summaries. The single count remained constant. References included surveillance, records, and confidential information. The state planned to try its own matters. EDNY focused on narcotics. Defense received the federal indictment and discovery. The scope was clear. The path ahead was not. The airport arrest and EDNY charge set the stage for everything that followed. After the verdict, the focus narrowed to sentencing. The defense cited treatment notes, jail medications, and in-custody behavior. They asked for a psychological evaluation or mitigation credit. They pointed to consistent symptoms and medication compliance. They requested a professional assessment before sentencing. In the alternative, they asked the court to credit existing records as mitigation and structure care into the sentence. Hardy also offered to cooperate. Topics included routes, participants, and money. He raised safety concerns for himself and his family. Counsel requested consideration for substantial assistance. No binding agreement was reached. The prosecution countered that impairment was not shown. Counseling notes and jail prescriptions did not prove diminished capacity. On cooperation, they said there were no concrete results, no corroborated targets, no actionable outcomes. The court denied a new evaluation and a continuance. It credited mitigation only in part based on the records. The court found no basis for cooperation relief. No deal existed. Safety concerns were noted but did not justify a reduction. Reasons for sentence: serious counts, a mandatory firearm enhancement, deterrence, and community safety. Sentence imposed: 35 years to life, consecutive terms on specified counts, and the firearm enhancement. No cooperation reduction. With sentencing complete, the record closed and the case moved to appeal. A guilty verdict is not the end. It begins the post-trial fight, focused here on mental health filings and cooperation efforts. For Damien Hardy, that fight moved immediately to motions asking the trial court to revisit competency, evaluation, and potential sentence relief. Defense filed a motion for new trial and, in the alternative, post-conviction relief, alleging the record signaled competency concerns and requesting new psychological testing. Affidavits followed, one from a clinician summarizing prior symptoms and medication history, others from family describing confusion, withdrawal, and erratic sleep around trial. The legal standard is dusky: whether the defendant had a rational and factual understanding and could consult with counsel with a reasonable degree of rationality. Defense argued trial signs, flat affect, note-passing confusion, medication changes should have triggered deeper evaluation and a brief continuance for testing. They asked for fresh neuropsych and psychiatric exams, plus access to jail medical records to clarify medication compliance during trial. The prosecution opposed. Competence is presumed. The court observed Hardy. Existing evaluations were adequate. His in-court conduct showed understanding and communication. Defense also claimed ineffective assistance for not pursuing a fuller mental health defense, including additional experts and mitigation. Under Strickland, they argued counsel's omissions were unreasonable and prejudicial. Reasonable probability of a different outcome had testing and expert testimony been presented. In parallel, Hardy renewed proffer attempts after the verdict, through counsel, seeking sentence relief in exchange for information. Letters documented willingness to cooperate and raise safety concerns. Counsel requested a meeting under proffer protections. The state's response: sentence relief requires substantial, material, and verifiable assistance, names, corroborated events, or testimony that advances prosecutions. They said Hardy's offers fell short. At the post-trial hearing, both sides argued. Defense pressed Dusky and Strickland. The state emphasized the presumption of competence and lack of prejudice. Judge's findings: competency. No substantial evidence triggered a doubt. Observations showed Hardy tracking proceedings and conferring with counsel. Mental health evaluations. Prior screenings and records were adequate. Additional testing was not required. Requested continuance denied. Ineffective assistance. Under Strickland, even assuming deficient performance, no reasonable probability of a different verdict given the trial record. Cooperation. The court noted substantial assistance relief depends on concrete, corroborated help. The showing here was insufficient to justify any sentence modification. Rulings issued in writing: motion for new trial, denied. Request for new psychological testing, denied. Continuance, denied. Ineffective assistance claim, denied under Strickland's two-part test. No deficient performance shown and no prejudice found. Cooperation-based relief, denied. The court found no material, verifiable assistance warranting a reduction. The court cited Dusky for competence, Strickland for counsel performance, and substantial assistance thresholds for sentence relief. Defense noted each denial on the record to preserve the issues for appeal. With those rulings, the post-trial chapter closed, and the case moved to the appellate courts where these preserved issues would be reviewed. The record now contained mental health filings and affidavits, requests for testing, Strickland claims, and cooperation correspondence, all denied. Those denials formed the backbone of Hardy's forthcoming appellate arguments. What the filings claimed, how the state answered, what the judge ruled, with citations, all preserved for review. In sum, competence not disturbed, no Strickland prejudice, no qualifying cooperation, motions denied. The next step would test those conclusions before a higher court. Appeal notices filed, briefing to come. The record, now complete, would speak. For Hardy, hope narrowed to what the documents could prove. And so, the appellate battle began. Section 1, the next arena, ascending to New York's appellate division. The appeal formally began with a notice of appeal, filed in the trial court, signaling Hardy's challenge to the judgment and sentence. Once filed, the clerk assembled the full record, transcripts, exhibits, and orders, setting the stage for briefing on the issues preserved below. The heart of the case would be the briefs, written arguments addressing competency and mental health, ineffective assistance tied to mental health investigation, the handling of evaluation requests, and how cooperation and proffer factored at sentencing. Setting the record straight, in the appellant's opening brief, Hardy's counsel argued the record raised bona fide doubts about competency, that trial counsel unreasonably failed to investigate and present mental health evidence, that the court erred by denying or limiting evaluations, and that post-verdict cooperation efforts were not properly credited at sentencing, claims they said undermined fairness. The brief previewed standards of review, abuse of discretion, and substantial evidence for competency and evaluation rulings, and Strickland's two-part test, deficient performance and prejudice, for ineffective assistance, with prejudice measured against a reasonable probability of a different result. Setting the record straight, the respondent's brief answered that Hardy participated coherently and understood proceedings, competency supported by substantial evidence. Counsel's mental health choices were reasonable strategy, evaluation rulings were a proper exercise of discretion, and cooperation and proffer did not compel any further reduction or relief. The state stressed deference. Unless rulings were arbitrary, they stand. Setting the record straight on prejudice, even assuming deficiency, Hardy didn't show a reasonable probability of a different result. On sentencing, the court considered cooperation within the law and imposed a reasoned term. At oral argument before an appellate panel, counsel distilled these points: competency signals, mental health investigation scope, and handling of evaluations and cooperation within lawful bounds.
Counsel on ineffective assistance tied to mental health evidence. What in this record shows both deficient performance and a reasonable probability of a different outcome under Strickland?
And where juror fairness intersects with mental health issues, did the court's handling ensure a fundamentally fair process, or does the record suggest a need to revisit those safeguards?
The matter is submitted.
Behind closed doors, the panel weighed standards against facts, setting the record straight on what the record actually showed. They reviewed competency under substantial evidence, counsel's performance under Strickland, evaluation rulings for abuse of discretion, and sentencing treatment of cooperation, explicitly tethered to the record. The appellate division issued its opinion, majority with a dissent. Setting the record straight, the majority affirmed. The record demonstrated competency. Hardy understood and assisted. No abuse in evaluation handling. No Strickland prejudice from the mental health strategy. And no sentencing error tied to cooperation or proffer warranting relief. The dissent would have remanded on juror impartiality concerns about overall fairness, but did not dispute the majority on competency, mental health rulings, or cooperation outcomes, keeping the record's bottom line intact. Hardy sought review in the New York Court of Appeals. Leave was denied, leaving the appellate division's opinion intact and positioning any further relief in federal habeas in EDNY. As of May 24, 2024, Damien Hardy remains incarcerated, serving 35 years to life. His state conviction is final. The fight continues in the federal courts. Cooperation as a path to relief is effectively closed absent new and substantial assistance to authorities. His attorneys are preparing a federal habeas corpus petition focused on Sixth Amendment ineffective assistance regarding the development of mental health mitigation, and any due process claims tied to competency or evaluation issues. Next comes filing in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York. If denied, he can seek a certificate of appealability to the Second Circuit, and potentially petition the U.S. Supreme Court. The anticipated Federal Claims Center on counsel's handling of mental health evidence, mitigation development, and fairness of evaluations, issues distinct from, but informed by, the state court record. Federal review is narrow. Under AEDPA, state decisions receive deference unless they unreasonably apply clearly established Supreme Court law or rest on unreasonable factual determinations. The process is slow and the odds are long. The record to date. The trial court's sentencing found mitigation and cooperation insufficient. Post-trial motions were denied. The appellate division affirmed, with a dissent noting juror impartiality concerns. The New York Court of Appeals denied leave. Our account is grounded in public records, filings, transcripts, and rulings, presented in chronological order. The enduring questions remain: what the law required, whether counsel met constitutional standards, and how courts evaluated mental health issues within the confines of the record. Ultimately, appellate review exists to test one case against settled rules and constitutional guarantees, and to ask, was justice done? For now, Hardy's status is unchanged, incarcerated, with federal habeas claims pending or anticipated, and no cooperation relief, absent new substantial assistance.
If you want to know more about the true stories behind New York's most notorious gangs, hit that subscribe button, because in the world of true crime, the truth is never simple, and it's never safe.